Good morning. Thank you to everyone for the terrific panel and the speakers before as well. I'm Prudence Beidler-Carr from the American Bar Association Center on Children and the Law. I think many of you have worked with my predecessor, Howard Davidson, for a long time. I did have a question that picked up on a theme a couple of you had referenced, which is working in collaboration with sort of entities and sort of taking a multidisciplinary approach outside of just health and child welfare. And Marva and Christine, I think you both mentioned working with the legal community and sort of justice, law enforcement, and obviously also attorneys. And so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that kind of collaboration with the legal community in child welfare and outside of child welfare.
I'll just say a couple things. One thing that sticks out for me, because we've been working on it, is the state habit of sort of doing prisoner reentry and having a lot of funding going back into the communities to support that without any plans at all for dealing with the fact that people go into jail when we do the studies that really anchor to what they've experienced in childhood themselves. So there's a lot of relationship between incarceration and the behaviors and activities that lead to that and childhood abuse and neglect. And so how do we harness the resources? And that's really a direct shot, as well as making sure that we bring medical legal partnerships in for the families so that they can really not have the shame cloud follow them, but really the healing of the family and the community support. So there's some very concrete policies I think that we can act on right now just by changing how we do what we do, not necessarily doing things differently, but how we are, who we are, how we relate really is something we can do today. I have a lot more to say, but I think that was just a high level.
Is this on? Yeah. I'll just say that the idea of cooperation across disciplines isn't simply a nice idea. It's absolutely necessary. I mean, this is a field that cries out, actually sometimes screams out for us to work together. And so whether it's in the clinical realm, often in the research realm, it's a problem that integrally involves these different disciplines. And so figuring, and there are a variety of ways obviously that this plays out, but it's an absolute imperative.
When you said that, it made me want to just say one thing's very exciting is in California and LA getting rid of youth prisons, getting youth diversion, completely rid of youth prisons, which would immediately bring youth into a collective interdisciplinary mode to really support them in an in-depth way and not let go until that works.
Marva.
Those are certainly, absolutely, as you said, imperative things to do. In addition to that, many parents do not have legal representation in court. I would wonder whether or not there's an opportunity for ABA and others to take a look at whether or not in our justice system that is appropriate and necessary for a parent not to have legal representation in court. There are opportunities for legal clinics in which attorneys do work with parent representatives, with social workers and with others as a team in preparing the support for the parent from a true legal perspective, but also having those other supports available. So those are just two examples of real world life right now instances where the ABA and others in the legal profession can take a look at how not just to make the system better, but to transform it into the kind of non-adversarial court system that may make a difference in this country.
Valerie?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that
It's on.
some of the research that we've funded, and I'm thinking of one project in particular where a researcher trained the legal community in child development. And based on research on knowing how children are able to tell the truth, respond to certain types of questions, to help the legal community to figure out how to work with these children if they're trying to disclose disclose an experience of abuse or neglect. So all of those kinds of collaborations are important at every level and at every sector. So it's not always the obvious. These kinds of studies that we fund may seem small and insignificant, but when you add them to the collective work that's already being done and the collaborations to continue to do that, they make a huge impact.
Christy, you
Since
have 15
since I was
seconds.
like a minute short, I think
Go
it was
ahead,
like
Chris.
4 minutes. And that I just want to say, in terms of this opportunity, the possibility that we have while we build in all the areas that we're talking about, it's really important to highlight. And that, we know trauma is as trauma does. When you have child abuse and neglect, there are things that show up. And we know something about what they are. They end up looking a lot like what we diagnose as mental illness and many other things in our bodies. And it turns out that when we address those symptoms from a trauma-informed lens through healing and what we know about healing, the symptoms start to get better. So there's a way that we can continue to focus on identification and all of those things. But if we see it, say something. When you see something, say something, right? It's when you see the symptoms of trauma, wherever you're sitting, mental health, law, that's real, and it's in our bodies. And we know we can do something now through the way we relate to each other in the moment. And actually, there's many, many tools and techniques and interventions that we can start employing, regardless of whether you carry a diagnosis of child abuse and neglect or something along those lines. It shows up, and it's everywhere.
I want to thank the four of you very much. As they say on the...